Hey everybody, how's it going? It's me, I'm here in New Zealand, doing an extra video because this month I went to Animation College New Zealand in Auckland and I gave a little talk, and it was basically a ANIMGym walkthrough using the tempo workflow, which you guys have seen before. It's always good to see a little bit more of it, of course, but I wanted to give you another extra little bit of video for this month to just wrap up the year and make sure that you get enough animation goodness all together. Okay, so I'm going to do another blast of questions that were turned in for the Ask Video Mail list contest thing I did at the beginning of this year, and we'll just get through a few of them and then add this video to the other one, and hopefully you'll have enough to chew on for the rest of the year. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into these questions. First one's from Eugene. Time is integral to our work, timing animation or delivering on time. The last part especially is a big struggle for me. How do you deal with estimating how much time a certain shot would take in order to get into decent shape? Sean Connery. I'm always lost because there's rarely a repetition on what we do. Clients always ask for something that is unique. So what are some basic estimates that you could hold as firm so you don't get overwhelmed? It is very, very, very simple. The more experience you have, the more confident that you can be that you will be able to estimate the time well. Where I'm at, I know I can block pretty much any shot up to about 10 seconds in a day. So after that, one little trick that you do is you kind of are involving the client mostly to get them to give you more time. In my business, especially running a company and stuff, a lot of the time wasted is not because of some things that I'm doing, it's things the client's doing. So I will get a really quick blocked version out, normally trying to stay as close as possible to what they've been talking about. And then what ends up happening is that they will see it and they'll think to themselves, well, this is exactly what we thought we wanted, but it looks terrible and that's all our fault. And that's what I try to do. So in some ways, being a fast blocker, like most animators are when they start off, just because you have blocked a lot more shots than you finished, in some ways that's actually a good thing, and it sort of works with the way that you want the approval process to go. But in terms of estimating the amount of time, start keeping a little bit more of a detailed log of how much time stuff is taking you, and then you'll know better and better as time goes on how much time it takes you to do this or that. Okay, my workflow advice when I was teaching at AM, and I think in the first advanced workflow lecture, which is 4 years old now, but my first piece of advice was to keep a log of what you're doing. And it doesn't have to be detailed or anything, but you should just write down, I'm trying this, and at the end of an hour or whatever, write down this is how far I got. Or at the end of the day, if you don't want to be that detailed and take that much time to do it, at the end of the day, say, I was able to block a 2-character, 5-second shot pretty well, with tempo in one day. And then see, as you're going on, how much time it's taking you to do the other parts of the process, and then when you start a new shot, do it again. You'll get a much better, honestly, if you do this with 2 or 3 shots over the next 3 weeks, you will know exactly. You just will know. It's just a matter of paying attention and logging it. Okay, so that would be my advice to you to improve on that. Okay. Next up, from Richard, I've always heard about the invisible wall in animation. Can you talk about that? How do you detect an invisible wall? Do you have a workflow to avoid that? Interestingly enough, what ends up happening is whenever you have a change in direction, things like they'll stop going one direction and they'll start going the other direction. What the wall is when you have keyframes that either just are stopped, so you are having your whole body translate and then it just stops translating, but when you were posing it, you had your character's like torso continue to move. And while you were blocking it, it looked like everything was continuously going like straight, but lo and behold, when you watch the animation back at speed, and that's really the only way to detect the invisible wall is to see it at speed. But when you watch it back at speed, all of a sudden something is pointing, something is very clearly going wrong in the body. So normally my workflow is to key all of the controls on the character, especially when I'm working in tempo, especially when I'm copying that tempo. So if I do that tempo pass, and my helper object or whatever I'm using to get that nice tempo is, doing a change in direction, it won't screw me up because normally my controls I key all of my controls, and then basically if there's a change in direction, I can purposefully break that up in the body and make that a little bit more interesting as that's happening, with some offsetting in the up the torso and down the arms or whatever, create some overlap, some overshoot, that kind of stuff. So I guess the workflow is to not pose things kind of like one at a time. Pose things sort of like piece by piece in your body. I suspect that so many of the problems that you guys have ever had are being completely taken care of by tempo, if you're using tempo. I honestly don't think that it's even possible to have some of the most common problems that plague animators if you're animating with tempo. I suspect that this might become one of them. Also from Richard, can you talk about strobing effect? Is this effect only bad spacing, or is it more than that? How to detect that in your animation? Can you give us more details? Strobing is not bad spacing. It's not necessarily when there's too much space between objects, because you will get strobing if you have any fast motion and there's no motion blur. That's kind of why motion blur is so integral to making animation look like real film, is because a film shutter is open for a certain amount of time, and if there's an object moving while the shutter is open, then the light reflecting off that object will have that property, will have that movement in it. So that's why we have motion blur, and it's extremely important to have. I imagine some animation, no matter how much motion blur is on there, it'll always look like it's moving too fast or strobing or whatever. But strobing actually refers to a effect where either by something that you're doing in posing or spacing is making it so that there is only like a flicker in the animation, making it so that there's almost like for instance, a good example is the 2-frame run cycle. I talk about this in the cartoony lecture, the 2-frame run cycle, where you can't push the timing of a run cycle absolutely indefinitely, right? So if you have a run that's like this, and then you speed it up, and you speed up as fast as you can, as an animator, we might say like, well, what's the fastest run cycle we can do? Well, that would be 2 frames, right? Left forward, forward, right foot back, right foot forward, left foot back. But that wouldn't work, because it would basically be this one, this way, and then it would be this. But as you can see, my legs are in the exact same position. So all that would happen would there be like a flash, like a flicker within the pose. And that's what strobing is. So you have to be very careful I try to point out when I see it in animation that's sent to me or in the AnimGym or whatever, but you have to be very careful that you're not, that like a character doesn't have a pose in one frame and then in the next frame there's like a hand that was right, like the right hand that was right here, and then he's like jumping out a window and his left hand, okay, is like right here as he runs out, because from this frame with his hand like here, like whoa, and then to the next one like this, it's going to look like the hand like flickered and just strobed basically. So that's a important thing to keep an eye on, especially in fast animation, very 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 quick animation. It's important to keep an eye on that. Okay. Next up, from Kara. In painting, drawing, and sculpture, we often imitate the masters in order to better understand and learn their technique as a way of practice before working on art in our own style. I've always wondered, do animators ever attempt to replicate a great animated shot as a learning technique? This is a really super contentious issue, especially because what ends up happening in some of these schools, like in Asian countries, actually, I shouldn't generalize. I think I've seen some from, well, anyway, other countries are that have tried to copy the success of the online schools. They take some of the assignments and they try to copy the assignment, the actual result, rather than actually do the assignment for themselves. Like, so for instance, if someone does a really amazing, ball and obstacle course, I'm thinking of animation mentor assignments right now, or like character walk or whatever. You'll see sometimes students in other countries like copy that actual animation. So really, 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 really bad idea. At that level, I would say that absolutely categorically no, don't ever do that. What I would say, though, is that it's always good to observe the masters, and you want to observe the masters for improving your workflow, because the simple truth is if you're looking at a shot, you're looking at the result of another person's workflow, right? So in order to achieve that, you wouldn't want to do this goes hand in hand with what I was saying in the demonstration that I gave at Anime College New Zealand this month's main lecture, that going about trying to learn animation by just trying to make shots is almost like doing this. It's almost like just only focusing on the result and trying to copy the masters. But that's not what an animator is. An animator is their workflow. So the point is that if you take a piece of animation that really inspires you, and then you say to yourself, what is about this animation that's really inspiring me, and how can I make that a part of my workflow? Not how can I replicate this, but how can I make this a part of my workflow? Like, so say for instance, and this is really great because a lot of people post their work in progress now from major films. Like, I've seen people's like Frozen demo reels, and I've seen people's, How to Train Your Dragon work in progress, shot progression videos on YouTube and stuff like that. They're very, very, very awesome and generous artists out there that are doing this kind of stuff. So what they're doing is inspiring you, but take how they are getting that result with such ease as the part that inspires you. Like, man, every single time this guy takes a shot or this girl takes a shot on, man, the eyes are just amazing. See if you can break it down a little bit more. Like, so for instance, like every single eye dart they do, there's a tiny little bit of saccadic movement, maybe like at the end, and that's adding just a tiny little bit of realism to it. Well, what's your iDart workflow right now? How would you add that kind of method to your workflow? That's just one example. I'm trying to, in everything that I show you guys on this site, to show you the workflow choice behind what I'm doing. I'm not just sitting up here, on camera and animating all day and showing you guys like, hey, look at this animation. Isn't this great? Isn't this wonderful? Now learn. I'm trying to do the thought process that you should be doing when you're looking at all animation. So definitely imitating the masters is fine, but you want to imitate the way the masters do it. That's where the master and apprentice relationship comes from. It comes from hundreds, if not thousands, of years of fine craftsmen teaching their apprentices how to do it. Okay, teaching them how to do it and letting them observe how they're doing it, and that's passing on the craft. If you were an apprentice and you went to a goldsmith's shop and you were just watching them do it all day, but being completely turned off and tuned out to how they were doing it, you were just like watching like this like gold knife or whatever like come about in front of you, and then when you were done, you just took the knife and you're like, wow, I'm gonna make this now. And then you sat down to do it. How would you ever do it unless you were paying attention to the steps? All right, so recreate that for yourselves, okay? Another one from Kara. What is your favorite animated character in a film and why? Now, this is a super hard question. It's really, really tough. I feel like I've tried to answer this before, but I was just... I got to watch a few animations that I didn't get to see during the year on the plane on the way here, and one of the ones that I got to see was I'm forgetting it now. Hold on a second. Oh boy, I'm forgetting it now. But it doesn't matter, because what I was going to say about the character was, and this is tied into a question I'm going to ask right. Oh, here we go. Let me I'll also ask this next question. In most scenarios, feature or game animation, it'll be very likely that not one but many animators work on a single character. What is the best way to work on the character's actions with a single personality presented in different states of mind when each animator has his own ideas for each shot or game clip, so that your emotions are not just generic nor too different from other clips or animation? And this tied in. Gosh, I really wish I could remember what movie it was now. But it was solid. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. And the main character, damn it all. This is really falling flat on its face now. Maybe it'll come to me as I'm answering that question. So what was done really well was this character really had a distinct personality and was really, really well, really like homogenized in terms of like the performance choices that were for this character. The way that's done on a film is actually, it's multi-part. One is the director has been working with the voice actor for a long time, and they've been sitting and making a lot of the performance decisions for you before you even get get up to the plate. And what that means is that really you're trying to hit something that's already been worked out and is already in somebody else's mind, at least two people's mind, the actor and the director. Sometimes even the editor is involved in those story decisions and performance choices as well. Okay, because they're all working so closely together. Well, actually, it's the actor and the director, and then the director and the editor. But anyway, so you're actually trying to live up to certain expectations. And it would be impossible to make it so that all performance choices, all acting choices are the same for all people, because yes, you do take your acting choices from life. So if you have never fallen in love, it's going to be pretty hard for you to, animate that shot where the character, sees the love of his life for the first time, right? So, there's always that. But in general, you are trying to hit something that has already been worked out, and it's difficult to do, but with a good director and a great actor behind that, the choices become very obvious. Now the emotions and the performance choices, not the acting choices, but sort of the performance. So I guess we should delineate those. Like, acting is basically like what is really going on, like on the page and in the scene. But you could miss something that's behind the voice. You could miss something that's like underneath, like the undertones or the subtext of a shot, if you are not there with the actor, or if you're not there with the director to do those things. So the reason I'm pointing that out is because if you think about it, I mean, there's a huge amount of performance choices for almost every single acting choice. Like, oh, he's angry at Joe. Well, is Joe his brother, or is Joe like his best friend? Did Joe just betray him? Like, how many times has Joe let this guy down? How am I going to animate this guy being angry at Joe? And so the line might be, "I'm angry at you, Joe." So it's like face value, and the actor probably did their best to try to do that, and to also get the subtext that the director has told them goes into the line. But then it comes down to you. You've got a blank character, a blank scene, character standing in T pose, and that line and that performance choice is going to come out of that. So being very aware, talking to your director, taking notes in dailies, and being just super interested but not like overly pushy, and not trying to overdo it in terms of how much you're kind of trying to be involved. You're involved enough as it is, just by default. So don't try to like sway the director, or say like, "Oh, that's a really good idea, but I was thinking for this shot, like maybe he's actually like not angry. Maybe this is maybe it's all like a lie." Well, now you're changing the film. I don't think anyone would really ever do that. Although I've heard stories about people kind of going way overboard. So, gosh, I can't remember the stupid movie that I saw. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to Google animated films 2014. Peabody and Sherman. There it is. Peabody and Sherman. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. Peabody and Sherman. So Peabody was animated. I felt like his character was super clear, and every single like little action that he did was totally in character. And I remember watching a little bit of Peabody and Sherman. It was on like sort of the I'm a little young for Peabody and Sherman myself, so it was on like sort of like the Nick at Night or something like that. But at any rate, I'm digressing right now. I just felt that there was a great sort of like even hand with the direction of Mr. Peabody, and because he's such a weird character. Ty Burrell does a great job of voicing him. I mean, he was like 100% the voice. It was probably a very easy choice who was going to do that. Sherman, on the other hand, it's a good comparison. He was a little generic. I kind of felt just a hair generic. I don't remember really. I do remember that Peabody always is like the hero. It's really not much about Sherman. It's more about Peabody than it is his kid, but in the original show, the kid was just there, almost kind of just to ask, "What are we doing now, Mr. Peabody? What do you mean by that, Mr. Peabody? How are we going to do this, Mr. Peabody?" If I remember correctly. But I just thought everything was really strong and just well done there. So yeah, it was good choices. It was good choices. Do you have any future personal or group projects in the mind after the completion of The Little Painter? I do. I am starting. I was talking with a friend of my wife's that lives here in New Zealand, and she told me about this thing that happened to her, and it completely, totally inspired me to make a short film about it. However, it's not going to be a crowdfunded thing. It's just going to be a personal project, and I'm going to do it just for fun, and try to finish it this year, and then maybe show people and that kind of thing. The Little Painter, and this is nothing against anyone that was involved in the Little Painter. There's nothing against the backers or anything like that. I'm still super unbelievably over the moon appreciative and excited about the movie. I think, though, that I need to do... it's funny because I was trying to figure out the way to say this, and I realized it's the Anim Jim mantra. I think I need to do a little bit more of a little bit less. Little Painter is a little over 5 minutes of animation, and the whole running time, including like credits and everything, is like 7 minutes. So, I think it's time for me to do a little bit more of a little bit less. So maybe do like a minute-long film on my own every like 6 months or something like that, and start getting a little bit more prolific. Getting my ideas out there. So that's why it's not going to be like this big Kickstarter thing or whatever. Everyone's done their part already. Everyone gets one, big Kickstarter. I had mine. I had a great time. It's done, and now I'm going to kind of do my own stuff. So that's my plan. Let's see. Here's a quick one. I need to create some first-person arm animations for a game. What would be your workflow for this? Would you animate just the arms or animate the whole character, then tear off, copy the arm animations onto an arm rig? All you have to do is just make sure that it looks like the arms are attached to something. That's kind of tricky in a first-person, from a first-person perspective because of how these games work. Now, I'm an avid gamer. I love first-person shooters. I've played them like all my life. And some bad arm animation can really ruin stuff. I remember in Counter-Strike 1.6, I can't remember what gun it is, but it's a submachine gun that has like this forward grip, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the stock is hollow. Any rate, but I always thought it was hilarious because the rest of the guns, they kind of had like the arms in perspective, but to get the left arm to actually be forward enough that it was holding on to that forward grip, it was showing like all the way up to like the bicep. So if this is the camera view, it was like this. So the other hand was like way back somewhere right here, and then there was this arm coming all the way out like this, and like your eyes are supposed to be right there. And I was like where is that arm coming from? It looks so stupid. So anyway, part of your issue is going to come down to if the design of the gun is correct, and whoever made it was kind of keeping your job in mind when they did so. So you're going to have to kind of work with what you're given in that regard. But I would not animate the full body. You just need to make sure that the full body is kind of involved. One thing, so you don't have to actually move like the chest or the spine controls, but if you want there to be like a moment where he lifts the gun up to pull like the magazine out or something like that, then do some translation on the cog. Don't try to do that just with the arms. It'll feel like it's not connected to the body. But you don't animate like the legs and the spine and everything just to get that feeling. You want it there to just feel like there is something larger that's moving that the arms are attached to. The other day, this is from that was from James Robotham, I like to call him. The other day, another one from him. The other day, I found that in Motion Builder's animation layers, you can set them to additive and override. and pass through within Override. Are these layer settings available in Maya? What are they used for? Could they be used to improve my workflow? I wanted to answer this one because increasingly, like on a daily basis, I am finding that Maya and keyframe animation is just one way to get performance into your work. Be it an animated short, TV commercial, feature film, creature effects, visual effects, a webisode, or a video game, mobile game, mobile apps, AAA titles, whatever it is. Maya and keyframe animation is just one way. Now, I happen to have a site, and part of my livelihood is based on how difficult it is to keyframe animation stuff in Maya. So I shouldn't poo-poo on it too much, of course, bite the hand that feeds me. But yeah, I'm totally excited about any tool that can give you more flexibility or create the performances that you want quicker. So without going all the way into converting kennyroy.com into a motion capture tutorial site, I may talk about tools like Motion Builder in the future. Just may. What those layers do, they don't have them in Maya. They might integrate something like that into Maya maybe in the future. But basically what the animation layers do, what they do is they make it so that either the animation is actually adding on top of the animation you already have. So for instance, if you have a walk cycle and your character's head is bobbing just a little bit with the walk cycle, and then you have an animation layer where you just animate the character's head turning like this, then they're going to work together. They're going to be additive. So he's going to be walking and he's going to turn, and it's still going to be bobbing like that. Right? So that's additive, and that's normally what you want because you are planning your animation to be animated with animation layers anyway. Okay? Override just means that any keyframe that is on that layer is going to completely negate any curve that's on that controller on a layer beneath it. So basically, you'd have your character walking, the head is not bobbing at all, right? The head used to be bobbing like this, it's not bobbing at all, and then you just have this head turn. And then maybe come back, or whatever. So, override is good if you have, like, let's say you have a very complex cycle, for instance, and one of the, so your character is holding something in their hand. Well, if you wanted, their hands are swinging in this run cycle that's very complex and detailed, well, you would probably just want to override, instead of like deleting animation, you just override on this arm. So that, let's say they're holding that gun in that game that you're working on, right? So you're holding that, and you can change this to holding the gun, and that overlap and whatever. So it's like this. And you're not having to counter animate that hand with that gun because he's supposed to be holding it straight up in the air. Okay, so that's the only difference, and it pretty much the moments when you'll need to use either one of those should be pretty obvious when they come up. There's another question that mentions the word layers. It's not layers, but it's another thing. I've heard about animating with layers. I don't mean animation layers in Maya, but iterate animating different parts of the body. Can you explain this workflow? I can't explain this workflow because it's basically complete. This is from Wojtek. This is completely against tempo. It's totally against tempo, and it's almost, there's basically three workflows now. One is a posed-based workflow, which is traditional and 2D animation, and translated and converted by the tools that were first developed by and now espoused at Pixar and all of the schools. And so that was one workflow, and then animating in layers is the other, and I think tempo is like the new third. So the guy who can explain this is Markovitz. Markovitz. I don't know how to say his last name because it's got a C in a weird spot. But anyway, the Animation Collaborative Mike, he's from Pixar, and he is very, very, very well spoken and adept at teaching the animating in layers. I know what it's about, but I couldn't tell somebody how to do it. I do it sometimes myself if it's extremely rarely called for. Like, so for instance, animating a mechanical bug with like 16 legs, I would definitely animate that in layers. Especially if it has like an antenna on top or whatever. You would animate the root, and then you would maybe follow up with the legs, and then you would put the antenna on top. If it's got little pinchers, you would do those pincher animation, whatever, that kind of stuff. But basically, what you animate from the largest parts outwards. So you actually kind of get like a really solid, really nice weight, nice textural timing on your root. And then you kind of like add the special sauce to the spine and maybe the arm poses that work with that, like, you know, character taking a big step to the left or whatever it is. You know, you kind of like layer it on. And then like the last thing, the thing that turns out to be almost like the least important is like the legs. You can actually save the legs till almost last, and then add them on, and then adjust everything to make it work together really strongly in pose. But that's basically the layered approach. I just don't use it. So another one from Wojtek. Often in job offers I read about clear timing. What does it really mean? How do I know if timing is clear or not? Seems like a silly question, but there's no such thing as a silly question, first of all. And it actually is asked for a lot, and people don't really know what they mean by clear timing. Clear timing means clear ideas. Okay? So what that means is that if all of your animation is run together, normally we say that that's floaty or whatever, or something like that. But if what it really means is that all of your ideas are running together. See, humans, we do things sort of like in phrases or beats, and you will walk in and you'll come to a stop, and maybe you'll breathe and you'll take a deep breath, and it's the end of my day. And then you'll sort of come to life again and take your hat off and hang it up on the rack, take your coat off and hang it on the rack as well. And then what will you do? Let's say you go over and look at the answering machine and see if you have any calls. Well, you can imagine the soupy version of that. Like the character walks in, the hands on the hat already, they're turning around, it's up there, they're already moving towards the answering machine while they're still reaching backwards and putting the coat back on the rack. Like all that. Like, it doesn't have to be mechanical and like robotic, like so separated, but there has to be some sort of indication when one idea has stopped and a new idea has begun. So sort of segregating your ideas a little bit, working a little bit more thoughtfully with the phrasing and the beats of your scene. That's what clear timing is. Okay, it's clear ideas. Another question, this one from Nicole. Do you ever create a facial cam and constrain the camera to the character's head? Absolutely never, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it looks like from the character's face. All that matters is what it looks like to camera. In games, that's kind of a little bit different. So we'll leave games to its own devices right now. But all that matters is how it looks like from the render camera. That's all that matters at all. So don't waste your time, because you're going to end up animating some things twice. So it's going to read perfectly in that, Requiem for a Dream cam, and then you're going to look at camera and you can't read anything. It goes hand in hand with what I was saying in the Ask Me email a while ago about like doing like a big movement and maybe choosing like to like tilt the head back instead of opening the jaw all the way. Because like on a movement, you can read the movement of the head more than you can the jaw sometimes, especially on a turn that's downwards, right? So So yeah, so only from camera. Only from camera. I know in character design there are certain guidelines you follow to make a character look younger or childlike. And I was wondering if there's any such guidelines in animation when you animate a child. One person told me once that children don't anticipate. So I don't know if that's true. It makes a little bit of sense. Anticipation is thought. Adults are a lot more deliberate. So if I'm going to reach for that thing over there, I'm going to anticipate on there. Like children are a lot more instinctual and a lot more unpredictable. So maybe as a workflow thing, you just whatever you normally use for anticipation on your adults, animate it and then cut it in half for a kid. Just see what that comes up with. Maybe that's a fun place to start. It's an easy workflow choice to make, and it might give you some pretty quick, believable results. I shoot video reference and I thumbnail, but I always seem to hesitate in the first few poses of a shot when I start blocking. I think it's because I'm questioning if I'm making the right choices in poses, or did I choose correctly when I decided to go IK arms instead of FK, etc. I know you talked about not being an animator that has to choose the perfect path, but how do you overcome that slight hesitation in the beginning or confidence in your choices? Is this something that comes with practice and time, or is it something that I need to push through to become an animator who is fearless? It's a great question. This is also Nicole. It all comes down to working that muscle. Your instincts are a muscle just like your arms and legs have muscles, okay? And if you don't ever go outside, ever, you're going to be winded when you get to the top of the stairs. And you're going to get nervous when someone tells you, okay, well, this, let's go to the beach and we have to climb like 10 flights of stairs to get there, or whatever. You're going to be like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. I probably can, but I don't know if I can. It's the same thing with animation. If you don't practice trusting your instincts will be weak, just like your muscles. Okay? You have to dive with no safety net and try it out, and increasingly over time and with enough shots behind your wake, you will know that you are leaping with confidence and that there is basically nothing that can get you down. With those strong instincts that have been really serving you for a while, there's no question of being fearless. All right, but I know it's a little bit of a catch-22, but you cannot. The beginning of a shot, especially at the beginning, is the worst time to hesitate. Don't hesitate. Well, I don't know what you can do, but force yourself to not hesitate. Okay. I know you showed us KK controllers before, but are there any other useful tools that you use regularly? Nicole again. I really I pretty much use out of the box Maya. Just like install, and I'm pretty much, that's it. That's all I use. KK controllers, I mean, really all I use it for is like the built-in controllers that they have, in there. And there's some like selection and locking tools, but that's kind of it. The only other tools I sometimes use are all from a website called Super Crumbly. I can't remember the guy's name. It's Brendan something. Super Crumbly. It's one word, Super Crumbly. Anyway, and let's see. What's his name? Can't remember his name. Anyway, but anyway, this guy's great. He's got a lot of cool scripts. One called AB Auto Rig, and some other selection tools and stuff like that. Very, very, very cool stuff. The only other stuff I use is some of his stuff sometimes. So yeah, so I pretty much use out of the box Maya. Now I used to say, well, that's because I want to be able to, you know, go anywhere, like any company, and know that if I sit down and they don't have like all these scripts that like I'm always using, that I'll be like screwed. That obviously doesn't apply to me anymore because you know, I just do work at Arconics, so obviously doesn't make a difference. So I don't know if there's really much inherent value to not using, you know, a lot of tools, but I just haven't found I need them. I get you know what it is? I get everything I need out of the box Maya. I suppose that if I took some time to learn some of these tools that other people are using and they sped up my workflow, I'd be really happy that I did. But right now I'm getting everything I need. So that's kind of the issue. Still trying to find this guy's name. Yeah. Anyway, supercrumbly.com. Some cool scripts there. Mostly animation and some rigging stuff. Last one from Nicole. Sometimes the shot is not working. How do you know to decide it would be easier to chuck the entire shot and start again? This question was asked sort of before I got all crazy into tempo. So I would just say, like, tempo, this is something that tempo takes care of now, because you're almost restarting the like important decisions, like all the important moments in your shot. You're sort of restarting them and redoing them like a dozen times as you're working on the shot. So that's what I would say. Another way you can tell is if you're making lists of notes for your shots and you have made lots of lists and you're still not happy with your shot, it's because there's something fundamental to how the shot has been animated that you're probably not ever going to get back to a place on that shot where you can change that super fundamental issue you're having with it. So in that case, I would say it might be time to just start it all over again. I hardly start shots over, though. I think it's because I kind of can get wildly different takes on an idea without having to redo any work. So there you go. Jason says, I hardly ever do thumbnails in your simplified workflow checklist. It's the first thing on your list, even before shooting reference. I usually shoot reference and then maybe thumbnail to exaggerate poses. Other than that, I'm not really sure what the benefits are of thumbnailing. The benefits are, what you want to look at it is this. These are the poses that if I had my dream come true scenario for this shot, these would be the freeze frames that you could take from this shot. Like these would be, like this shot would be filled with so many awesome poses that they would use each one of them for the poster for the movie. That's what thumbnails are. Dream come true poses. Okay? Now when you're doing your reference, your body can't move at all, and you really don't know exactly how you're turning the camera and how strong your silhouette is and blah blah blah. If you need to draw your thumbnails from human reference, from video reference, because you just don't have the drawing skills to construct, the human form, then I would say that you need to do a little bit more practice drawing. But if you can't see the value in getting dream come true thumbnail poses before you sort of adulterate those ideas with seeing some video, then I think you're kind of a little bit missing the point of thumbnailing. Thumbnailing and video reference don't give you the same thing. Maybe that's where you should start with adjusting your thought on the subject. They don't give you nearly the same thing. Video reference is good for unique ideas and for some maybe detailed, realistic ideas on human movement, but not much else. Performance choices, weight shifts, those things can be in video reference too, but for most animated moments, what you can think up, dream up in your head will be way stronger than you could ever shoot for most animated stuff. So if I were you, I would maybe just take a moment to think about, well, do I want to redo my workflow to include thumbnailing before I improve at drawing? Maybe not. Maybe you want to work on drawing and keep a sketchbook and get a little bit better, and then see if you start peppering it into your workflow, if you're getting better results, just automatically. Okay. Let's make this the last one. Here we go. I've noticed that I stare at my play blasts for way too long. I was wondering if you give me tips to speed up my workflow and have better focus when animating and watching play blasts. Also, how often and when do you do play blasts? Do you use the viewport playback at all? It's another thing that I think that Tempo fixes. I used to play blasts when I wanted to make sure that a note that I made for myself was in the animation, was there and present, and I hit the note. So if you haven't completely switched over to Tempo, then, well, actually this is still like after blocking plus and polish as well, you play blast, so this still applies. When you're making notes for yourself and you have those things you're trying to get through, look at your play blasts just for hitting that note. Why? Because you made that note when you first sat down in your animation, therefore it's your eyes when they were very fresh, and you need to trust that person that had fresh eyes and saw this problem with your animation. You've been working on it too long. You don't have nearly the eyes that that person does, so trust that person. Trust you, an hour ago or 2 hours ago or whenever that made that note, okay? Make a play blast, and if it was just like head hits wall, frame 45, look at frame 45. Did I hit it? Yes, good. And then look away as quick as possible. Because you need to preserve your eyes as long as you can, despite the fact that you're going to lose them as you're working, okay? And then keep on doing that. Go through your list of notes, adjust them, fix them, and then play blast just to see it at speed for the purposes of fixing that note, and then move on, okay? Hopefully you'll have a moment where you can take a break and then make a new play blast of the scene where it exists right now, and then make new notes, a new list of notes. But you should not be looking all over your shot every single time you play blast, because you'll lose your eyes super quick that way, okay? Now, do you use the viewport playback at all? To answer that part of the question, yeah, I use it all the time. And the great thing about Tempo is that if you're using a helper object, no computer that is sold today is not fast enough to hit play and watch in the viewport if you're using a sphere or even a very simple like bouncing ball rig. You can definitely see the timing and definitely animate with Tempo with the viewport playback. And the thing about viewport playback is you're not really taking what you're seeing, so you're not losing your eyes. What you're seeing is kind of inspiring you to imagine the timing that way. So if a ball anticipates slowly and then jumps up, then you're imagining your character doing that, and you're just using the energy that's coming out of the screen to inspire you to imagine it that way. If it does it a different way, then immediately it will have the same sort of effect on what you're imagining. It's not like you lose your eyes looking at two different play blasts of different timing ideas. So Tempo actually keeps your eyes fresher for longer as well. So yeah, viewport playback the entire time in Tempo until I get my rig in there, and then even then when I have them in stepped keys and full body poses on my Tempo keys, I still use viewport playback. And then maybe when the scene starts lagging, I will start play blasting, but then at that moment only for seeing if I hit the one note that I set out to do. not to just watch my animation over and over. Okay? And you don't have to, because your timing choices were done at the very beginning. So there should be no issues. You know, you shouldn't have to watch your animation over and over as much as you used to, because you were still kind of making timing decisions and adjusting timing and sort of seeing like how your timing and your posing is fighting now that you have, you know, something in front of you, something in your scene. Tempo gets something in your scene immediately that you can judge the timing of, and you can hone it and possibly perfect it. So you don't have to watch your playblast back. You can take that entire consideration out of your mind when you're watching a playblast, and then just have so much more, like, you know, energy to focus on other things. So I really think it's great. If you can't tell, I'm super stoked about tempo. I don't know what to do with it though, in terms of like am I going to like maybe write a book on it? I don't know. I'm not going to bore you guys with those things yet. That'll do it. Hope you enjoyed this video and the Animation College New Zealand talk that I did. Having a lot of fun. This is the last video for this year, so have a great holiday. Hope you guys are relaxing and having a lot of fun, and I will see you in 2015. And as always, rock on.